Hi, I'm Rochelle Courtenay from Share the Dignity, and welcome to another bloody podcast.
Well, welcome to another bloody podcast. Today I am interviewing myself, but I'm also joined by Sarah Shotunde, who is new to Share the Dignity's Pad Central as our Marketing Advocacy Communication Manager, otherwise known as our MAC Manager. With years of experience, this conversation came about that we're going to share with you because Sarah was really interested in what Share the Dignity's next 10 years looks like. So we always start another bloody podcast with a would you rather question. So your would you rather question for today be, would you rather periods were completely stigma-free or completely cost-free?
I feel like I'm going to lean towards stigma-free because I feel like if they were stigma-free, we could have more organic conversations that I think would enable the conversation around being cost-free to be easier and more well understood and able to be actioned. So I think that would be the first step, and then we would go into cost-free, hopefully.
And I agree with you on that one because I believe if we were stigma-free, we would also be able to bring more men on the conversation.
Yes.
And, you know, we always say if men had periods, they would be free everywhere.
True.
So
That's true.
that would lead to cost-free.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this episode is a little bit different because Sarah is going to be interviewing me. So I'm going to buckle back and not ask the questions. I'm just going to answer.
Thank you so much for having me on, Rochelle. I'm so excited to be talking to you today about Share the Dignity, what we're doing, where we're going, and how that affects all Australians. What I would love to start with is the fact that we are in menstrual May right now. So why is that important for Share the Dignity?
Yeah, Share the Dignity very early on was able to collaborate with World Menstrual Hygiene Day, which actually falls on the 28th of May. It's an exciting day to celebrate everything menstruation, but for Share the Dignity, it was a opening for us to be able to celebrate the work that we've done, how far we've come, and also focus on how far we've got to go, which ties in beautifully to our conversation today, which is around what does menstrual equity look like for Australia?
Yeah. So could you help me answer that? What does menstrual equity look like for Australia?
Share the Dignity has a very clear goal that we want menstrual equity by 2031. So what that means is that we want a world, I actually want the world, but let's just start with it in Australia, that period products are as accessible as toilet paper. So should you be at a sporting ground with your kids on a Saturday morning and you picked up the wrong handbag and you don't have period products, you can go into the bathroom and there's period products there. There's a sanitary bin. And for the coach that is coaching Ruby, your daughter, he has an understanding around menstruation and he has no problems having the conversation with the under-12s football team. Whether you're at work, there are period products in your workplace. Every hospital, every school, anywhere that you are getting an education, there are period products. It would be abnormal for there not to be period products in libraries, courthouses, and everywhere in between. That is the goal of menstrual equity for Share the Dignity.
And can you tell me from an organisational point of view, what is Share the Dignity doing right now to help achieve that and work towards that?
Share the Dignity doesn't take this goal lightly. And in order to do it, we needed to have measurable outcomes. So when we did our bloody big survey, in 2021, we had 125,000 responses. To find out then that 1 in 4 in Australia have been through period poverty is extraordinary. Now, for those listening that don't know what period poverty is, it's when somebody is unable to deal with their period with the dignity that we all deserve. So leaving a tampon in for 8 hours to try to make the pack last longer, cutting a pad in half, to hear only in 2026 that a woman is using bread in her undies in regional Victoria because she cannot afford period products, still covers me in goosebumps. It should not be happening anywhere in the world, but in Australia, it is our goal to make sure that that problem does not exist. So in 2021, we held the survey. In 2024, we held the survey again with 153,000 responses. 2027, we're going to do that survey again. So in 2024, we're going to focus on the biggest body of data that the world has ever seen on menstruation. We found out that 63% of girls were not participating in sport because of their period. In order to improve those numbers of the 63% of girls not participating in sport, we brought out a campaign called Bloody Good Sport. And what we did was work with all the sporting codes to be able to look at ways that girls can stay in sport. We know that participation in sport starts to fall off when girls are around that age of 14. We don't want periods to be a barrier to participation in sport. So Bloody Good Sport is about how do we find period products in every training bag? How do we make sure that wherever they're playing sport that there is a sanitary bin? Does every sporting code look at whether wearing white bottoms is productive to keeping girls in sport? Even things like how do we make sure that every sporting code plays a role in training their coaches and their players about menstruation? Because if Ruby's dad puts his hand up to coach the under-14s football team and he has never been educated on menstruation, how does he have any understanding about what the girls are going through? For me, all of those things will help to improve the numbers so that when we do Bloody Big Survey in 2027, perhaps we're not looking at that number being 0, but perhaps that number will be sitting somewhere in the 40%. And then by 2030, when we do that survey again, maybe that percentage will be down in the 20%, which is acceptable, but we're moving the dial on the Bloody Big Survey results. So one of the other questions in the Bloody Big Survey was that 63% of women were not participating in work because of their period, and the number one reason was a fear of leaking. The problem with that number of 63% is that this problem can be alleviated by just providing period products in a bathroom. Now, I'd suffered severely with endometriosis, so for me to sit in a meeting that was any longer than an hour and a half, I was full of anxiety. So is that what our workplaces want? From most workplaces, they're providing tea and coffee and morning teas, and some of them have yoga classes and some provide breakfasts. Providing period products in a bathroom, you'll get more out of your staff. It should just be a no-brainer. We have worked with the Fair Work Australia to also look at what does the provision of period products look like in a legality perspective. Now, we really wanted them to put must provide period products, but we sit comfortably knowing that the end of 2025, there is now a should provide period products in workplaces and sanitary bins as well. So for us in a normal workplace, there is toilet paper and there is a bin, but in some places where we've listened to Joe Farrell talk about how bad it is on building sites, they don't even have a safe place to go to the toilet, let alone a sanitary bin and provision of period products. In the Bloody Big Survey, we also found that 77% of TAFE and university students did not participate in going to uni during their period. And again, the biggest fear is of leaking. And again, this could be easily solved by just providing period products in their bathrooms. Now, all girls in Australia have the provision of period products in high school, except for in Northern Territory and Tasmania now. So now we're seeing an Australia where they've got used to having period products available in their bathrooms, and yet now they're going to university where they can be our doctors and our teachers and everything that they want to be. But as we're hearing from girls, they are not participating in university because of the cost of period products at a really crucial time for them, where they've potentially left home, they've got a job, and their expenses are so much greater than they were when they were at school and they were given to them for free. So how are we trying to lessen that number? By working with the universities, working with the education department on the provision of period products, and everywhere somebody is getting an education. So if we're moving the dial on workplace, on sport, on public health, so it should be mandatory for every state and territory to provide period products in every hospital. If you can get a CAT scan, your head sutured, and morphine in a hospital, you should be able to get period products, right? So every question that we have in the Bloody Big Survey has an advocacy arm to it, including our council cares. So this is where We went to every single council in Australia, all 500 plus of them, gave them a letter outlining what menstrual inequality looks like in their council region. And when we do our survey in 2027, we will go back to them with where their dial has moved up or down. What we asked for them in 2025 was, could you be a council that cares? So how do you provide period products in a free, accessible location in your council area? Can you offer a rebate for reusables? Now, that is damn good for landfill. Every council has a problem with rubbish. But it also means that the people that take up on that are not then having to go through period inequality. How do we make sure that the council helps educate their constituents, both men, women, boys and girls? How do we make sure that they play a role in that? We provided them the link with the animation. So we did a 90-second animation that is nonverbal, explaining menstruation, how to use products. That has now been viewed over 200,000 times on our YouTube channel. But interestingly, more than 80,000 of those are men. Now, that's interesting, right? Because in our Bloody Big survey, we found that 51% of women said that they didn't feel like they were adequately educated on menstruation. Imagine finishing school and not being adequately educated on maths or English. It just wouldn't happen. So how do we make sure that women are better educated, but also how do we make sure that young boys are educated? Because the young boy that doesn't get educated becomes somebody's father, somebody's husband, somebody's boss, and they have no understanding. And including a coach. I worked with the NRL on a one-pager of what does a coach need to know so that he is fully armed with how to get the best out of the people that are playing sport with them.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on a really interesting point there around education and education resources for a wide variety of stakeholders. Do you provide anything like that to help people learn more about periods through Share the Dignity?
Share the Dignity has an education hub page. It is freely accessible. We're not asking you to give us your email or pay anything. We actually have got education for
everyone.
Yeah, everyone.
It is for everyone.
And that being everyone from a young boy. So what does a brother need to know? A bro in the know? What does a coach need to know? What does a workplace need to know? There are downloadable resources on how to implement menopause and menstruation leave on our website. Everything is there to try to remove the shame and stigma around menstruation, because education has the power to do that.
You have done some incredible campaigns and work with some incredible partners to contribute to this mission towards period equity for 2031 over the last decade, because Share the Dignity is now 11 years old. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those big activities or activations that you do?
Share the Dignity is about trying to have menstrual equity by 2031. Yes. And for us, that means writing ourselves out of a job. And in order to do that, advocacy plays a really big role in that. So right back to 2018, when we advocated for the removal of the GST and having that win on the 1st of January 2019, when GST was no longer associated with period products, was a no-brainer. Through to our Bloody Big survey, advocating for period products in every school where people are receiving an education. No girl should ever miss a day of education. Our Dignity vending machines, for those that don't know, is a vending machine that dispenses free period products at the touch of a button. I got a message on LinkedIn from an incredibly accomplished woman who was having one of the worst days. She had had a miscarriage, and that she walked into a library and our vending machine was in that library, and she was able to access period products. And she said, I can't tell you how bad my day was, but that little bit of dignity saved me, and I just wanted to thank you. Our vending machines are now in thousands of locations around Australia, in primary schools, in hospitals, and all of those sorts of places. But what I love about our vending machines is that they have now been replicated around the world, but in Australia now there's 1,500 vending machines being rolled out through all of Victoria public places, which is, you know, I'm super proud of. I know that there is other businesses out there that are there to make profit by putting vending machines in and capturing data to be able to do that. At the end of the day, our goal is to ensure that people don't go without the very basic essentials. So whatever way people want to jump on the bandwagon, it's all about menstrual equity for us.
What can the everyday Australian do to contribute to your mission to achieving period equity by 2031?
This is not just my mission. This is everybody's mission. This is, when you have such a big brand like Woolworths who come on board to help us to share the dignity in March and August, 5 cents from the sale of every period product that is sold comes through to us to increase the fleet of vending machines and to keep them stocked. That's a pretty big commitment from one of Australia's biggest corporates, right? It's about how does everybody play a role in having the conversation about menstrual inequity. And whether that's putting a Share the Dignity collection box in your office or your workplace, that helps us to use their voice to be able to make sure that there isn't a person in Australia that doesn't know that a woman in regional Victoria used a piece of bread to deal with her period. Like, that is not okay. There isn't a woman or a man on this earth who wouldn't be empathetic to hearing that story, and that we're all part of playing a role in changing that.
So how does Menstrual May help drive progress towards your 2031 mission?
I don't know that Menstrual May in itself. I think that World Menstrual Hygiene Day shines a light on menstruation. And whether that having open conversations about periods
every day.
Yeah. For me, it's about how to Share the Dignity play a role in everyday changing conversations around anything that's menstruation, whether that's menopause, whether that's having your first period, or everything that comes between. Now, I know that while we've shone a light on menstruation, there is some great work being done in the endometriosis world as well. And every time somebody is publicly having that conversation, there is a conversation around menstruation, right? Whenever there is Shelley Horton talking about menopause and the fairy godmother, every time people are having those conversations, that's breaking down the shame and stigma.
And I feel like it's quite layered. So at the core it's the normalization of the conversation, it's breaking down the shame and stigma, then you have access, and we also have policy change at all kinds of levels of governments. Is there more to that?
No, you hit the nail on the head. Our Bloody Big Survey is about getting the data to be able to make federal changes, state changes, council changes, workplace changes. I think people have this perceived vision that it's just somebody in poverty who cannot afford it. Now, yes, we should be absolutely shining the light on the person who cannot afford period products, but it is the everyday Australian that has had a miscarriage and needed a period product, who's taken the wrong bag to a football game to watch their son play football and doesn't have access to period products, or has had an accident at work and is stressed to their eyeballs about getting back to their bag and whether they've got period products in that bag. How do we have an Australia where those problems don't exist or they are minimised because access to period products are there?
It's such huge work, and I feel like there's just so many touch points. And I think what you said then is really critical around the fact that it's everywhere. It's not just in a corner far away that doesn't touch you. It could be your neighbour, it could be your colleague, and I think that really validates why all these advocacy projects across various different industries are so critical. Is there anything you're afraid of?
I'm afraid now at what is happening in the world and how it has affected Australia, with the fact that the price of fuel is so high. And while the price of fuel is high, I'm hearing more stories and more stories of everyday Australian women and girls who cannot afford period products. So while I take 3 steps forward, I feel like this year we're about to take 4 steps back, where more people are going to need us more than ever. It scares me. It scares me that in 2027, I want to read that people are not as affected by menstrual inequality, but I'm scared that the numbers are going to get worse based on what is happening right now. So even though we've got these campaigns and we've got councils helping and we've got provision of period products in schools and hopefully in sports and in workplaces, that what is happening in the world with the price of fuel and how that price of fuel will then lead to increased prices of food, that we're going to have more problems than I ever wanted, and that the numbers in the 2027 survey are not going to reflect what we want them to reflect. And that, while we're hearing about one woman having to use bread in her underwear to deal with her period in regional Victoria, that those numbers are going to blow up like never before. That's what I'm scared about.
What can the everyday Australian do to contribute to the greater good? What can they do at various times throughout the year to support Share the Dignity's mission and make sure that the women who are vulnerable or who continue to be vulnerable actually do have access to period products?
Great question. I think the one thing that we can all do is know that the problem exists, right? Because there isn't a woman in Australia who wouldn't give a pad or a tampon to somebody in the bathroom should you hear a cooey. Has anyone got a... Like, that is a girl code, right? But how can we involve women and men as well? How can we all play a role in that? So many ways. Donate in March and August when our collection boxes go out. Don't just assume that everybody has enough period products. There are more than 3.3 million Australians who live below the poverty line. That number is only going to get higher as this fuel crisis hits us, and then food insecurity. Buy some period products. Set up a $5 direct debit, but also don't assume that everybody in your friendship group knows that people can share the dignity. Your voice is the most important thing that any of us have to be able to make change. And if you can afford to give where you can. If you head to our website, we've got a solution for everybody, whether it's a carry case that is perfect for sporting clubs, whether it's a big dignity vending machine, which is perfect for stadiums, councils, a slimline dispenser. It is up to you as a great citizen to also push for your workplace to provide period products. Push for your council to get on board. People need to hear the voice screamed from volumes, right? If there's anything to learn from the removal of the GST on period products, when our Prime Minister said, I've heard no noise from any of the state and territories, we bloody made noise, and we made enough noise to remove the GST on period products. So if you want your council to provide free period products, to offer a rebate and to educate, make enough noise in your neck of the woods for the women that live in your area.
Across those industries of sport, schools, education, workplaces of all industries, heads of those corporates as well can reach out. We've got those products available and they can easily include them in their bathrooms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right now, there shouldn't be anyone who's moving into the next financial year without having provision of period products in their budget.
Agreed.
We're going to find you.
Okay, something else exciting that happens in May is Volunteer Week. Could you please talk about the role volunteers play in making this work possible?
Share the Dignity would not exist without our incredible army of volunteers that we call Sheroes. Now, I don't say Sheroes and Heroes because Heroes is already in the word of Sheroes, right? So we have around 4,000 volunteers around Australia. So if the products are donated in Broome, Bendigo, Brighton, they stay in that local area. So our volunteers are the voice of their neck of the woods. They are the Rochelle in Bendigo. I was catching up with volunteers in Perth recently, and one of the volunteers said, "Oh, I'm known as the pad lady in my area." And I'm like, oh my God, that makes me so proud because I cannot be everywhere. And you are the Share the Dignity in your neck of the woods. So our volunteers will go into a collection point, whether it be Woolworths or your local councillor's office, pick up the products, bag them, log them, count them, and then get them out to the charities that we help. So we help over 4,000 charities around Australia. So they don't ever come back to a central location. They stay in your neck of the woods and they go to the women that are helping you. It's in the bag is probably one of my favourite things to partake in, and it's a little bit bigger. So we ask as many volunteers as possible to help us. So we're asking you to go into Bunnings, pick up the bags, check them. The smell in your car when you are doing an It's in the Bag run is like next level. It's a real checkmate moment of how much kindness there is in Australia, to be honest. And then we get them out to the charities. But to see the charities be able to receive these bags and give them out is one of the greatest gifts in the world, to be honest, as a volunteer, as a person. And there could never be enough volunteers for Share the Dignity. But volunteering is what makes the world go round. And so for Volunteer Week, I want to say a kudos to anyone that volunteers because you make the world a better place.
And for those listening, if they want to sign up to be a volunteer, can they do that?
One of the things I always hear is that Share the Dignity is a great organisation to volunteer with because you don't have to commit to time every week. We do drives in March, August and November. So people can give the time as much or as little as they like when it comes to volunteering. So we want you. We want you to help us to share the dignity. So you can head to our website, sign up. It's super easy. We'll be holding your hand all the way, and together we'll be sharing the dignity.
Why do you feel like it's so important to look at menstrual equity through an inclusive lens?
Menstrual equity through an inclusion lens would be ignorant not to do it. I think it's about ensuring everyone has access to period product. And, you know, I say it all the time. It doesn't just mean those that are living in poverty. It's the woman who's picked up the wrong bag. It's the woman who's in a wheelchair. It's the woman with autism who cannot put a pad in her underwear. It's about understanding what the needs are for everybody.
So leaning into the future, what gives you hope?
If I take away the lens of where I am scared right now, what gives me hope is that young girls are just having conversations about their periods without a care of who is around them. I love that young girls are going to school and that there is provision of period products in bathrooms. So for them, they will never know a world where they didn't have access to period products. That women are having conversations around menopause and that our younger, being women in their early 40s, are being actually listening to us in our 50s going, oh my God, is that what I expect? Because never in a million years did I expect to go through what I went through when I went through menopause, because there was never conversations around it. So I'm really hopeful that our daughters and our daughters' daughters will never get to menopause and have no understanding about what that is. They'll never get to their first period and no one's spoken to them about it. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited about a world where provision of period products are in bathrooms wherever you go.
I really want to talk to you about Share the Dignity's mission towards period equity in 2031. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What is it and how are we going to get there?
In 2015, when I read an article that talked about the fact that women were using socks and newspaper and wadded up toilet paper to deal with their period, I couldn't believe that that was happening. If I fast forward to today, we've now collected 6 million packets of period products. We've advocated for the removal of GST. We now have provision of period products in most primary and secondary schools and in some TAFEs and universities. We've come so far, but we have a long way to go. It is going to take the federal government. It is going to take state government. It is going to take councils. It's going to take workplaces. It's going to take sporting organisations. It's going to take everyday people to play a role in what menstrual equity looks like. And so one of the things that somebody said to me the other day was, well, what if you don't make it? So what if I don't make it? I'll move the dial. I've got nothing to lose. I've only got everything to gain, right? I want a world where my granddaughter goes to school, can go to work, can do anything she wants to. And if she gets her period and she doesn't have something, there is something there for her. She will never understand a world where period products are not accessible, and that there is no shame and stigma about talking to it, and that boys in her class will say, oh, you've got your period unexpectedly on the back of your dress. Here's a pad for you. I'm going to wrap my jumper around your waist. That's the world that I want. And so if we don't get there by then, I'll just move it forward another 3 years if I have to, but I will bloody die trying, and I know a lot of people will.
Thank you so much for your time and insights. I've loved hearing from you and learning from you, and I'm so excited about the future.
Thank you. Menstrual Equity by 2031.